Hello and welcome to this Black Talk Radio News commentary. My name is Scotty Reed. Today when I logged on to the internet to check the news feed, I saw that Google had produced a doodle which was honoring a Japanese American weightlifter by the name of Tommy Kono. And this man spent 3 years in an internment camp. He would go on to win Olympic gold for the United States. And today is his birthday, and that is why he is being honored with a Google Doodle. So, I've been paying attention to this nonsense, all of this controversy concerning critical race theory. And I thought to myself, a lot of people are opposed to critical race theory because they think it only applies to African Americans, that this academic course only pertains to African Americans, but in reality, it can be applied to all victims of racism here in the United States, and that includes people of Asian descent. So I thought that I would try to use his birth date in this Google Doodle to try to, I guess, explain critical race theory to the uneducated. I mean, it's a lot of people making fools of themselves and showing their lack of knowledge concerning this voluntary college level course that you don't have to take. And it is not being pushed on K through 12 students. But of course, a lot of these people know that. Interestingly, there was a professor, a New York Times reporter, who came up with the 1619 project, I believe it's called. I'm sorry, I don't recall her name right off the bat, but she was applying for a tenured position here in North Carolina at the University of North Carolina. Now, unfortunately, North Carolina University is being governed by political, people in office. And this state legislature, even though we have a Democrat who is the governor, Roy Cooper, the legislature is totally in Republican hands. And they are opposed to this black woman because, she came up with this project examining historic racism in this country. So they attach critical race theory to her, and all it is anti-blackness and the Republicans' lack of any substantial issues, any issues of substance to be debating. They want to instead, as they always do, distract their followers with culture wars and what have you. So first, let's look at a definition of critical race theory, because a lot of these people who are going to these school board meetings and protesting against critical race theory, which isn't being taught in these K through 12 schools, but they're just following the lead of conservative media and conservative firebrands, and they don't even know what critical race theory is. They just think it's about teaching about racism, and they don't want that taught. They want to stay steeped in that whiteness and that white mythology about the greatness of the United States. So let's go ahead and look at the definition of critical race theory. So critical race theory is an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States who seek to critically examine U.S. law as it intersects with issues of race in the U.S. and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. So again, as I listen to some of these useful idiots try to debate critical race theory and not even having a grasp of what it is, but trying to frame it in terms of conservatives versus liberals, as you can see here, critical race theory is also challenging liberal positions. So again, that goes to show you how these people don't know what the hell they're talking about. So anyway, let's go to this excerpt from the article from the Google Doodle honoring Japanese American weightlifter Tommy Kono. In 1942, then 12-year-old Tommy Kono was forced into an internment camp during World War II. 10 years later, the American born weightlifter would win a gold medal in the Olympic Games for the U.S., the first in a record setting career. He would go on to set world records in 4 different weight classes, a hefty achievement for someone who had to overcome not just the suspicion, I would say, racism of his fellow countrymen, but also obstacles to his own physical health. To honor the strength of his achievement, Google on Sunday celebrated Kono's 91st birthday with an animated doodle depicting the clean and jerk, an iconic weightlifting exercise. Now, let's move into the critical race theory as it relates to Mr. Kono's story. All right, so on March the 20th, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066 on February the 19th, 1942, authorizing evacuation. You see, they use these words very deceptively. Let's say authorizing the internment in concentration camps of persons of Japanese descent. All right, so it was originally an executive order, but in order to, I guess, give it some legal backing of Congress, they then came up with the Japanese Internment Bill, HR 6758, which went into effect March 20th, 1942. And this is solely based on their race. And some people will try to excuse it and say, oh, well, we were at war and the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, but was there any internment of German, descendant people here in the United States that was born here? Did Fred Trump, Donald Trump's daddy, get put in a concentration camp because we were also during World War II fighting the Germans? No. Actual German POWs who fought for the Third Reich, when they were brought here to the United States, were treated better than African American members of the military. So it's based on racism. This Japanese internment bill is based on racism, and that's all critical race theory is doing, examining the intersection of race and law. That's all it is, and it can apply to more than just African American persons. It can, or history. It can also apply to Chinese American history, Japanese American history, let's say Hispanic American history or Mexican American history. All people who were victimized by racist laws here in the United States. All right. This has been Scotty Reed with a Black Talk Radio News commentary. Please continue to support the efforts of the Black Talk Media Project, a North Carolina-based nonprofit, by going to blacktalkradionetwork.com and making a tax-deductible donation today. Peace and blessings.